with everything that's going on between America and the UK and Europe more broadly, it does also feel like there's some allyship that could potentially be resetting, which is it's very interesting. I don't know what that's going to look like, but it does feel like if Europe keeps I don't know. The relationship between America and Europe is very tense right now, to say the least, and, I think this should could be a lot of reshuffling in where allies lie in a global order. Europe seems to be moving closer to China in some ways. Granted, we are still allies of Europe, but there seems to be some reshuffling. It wouldn't surprise me if America continues to get closer and closer to Israel, a free Iran, possibly I mean, it's still maintaining a solid relationship with Japan. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic to watch. So I don't know if anybody has thoughts, but yeah.
The
Can I
downfall
answer
of
that?
that is going to do a lot for showing what's what, because whether they believe it or not, Europe's one of their biggest problems is Islamic invasion. Many of them are not willing to admit that, but Keir Starmer, for example, I mean, there are people who we can confidently say are accepting money for allowing all of these immigrants into their countries. Yeah, exactly. When there's no more ATM, like Nare says, we'll see what happens. And I think that's going to be very interesting thing to remove from the equation and now see what everybody else wants to do. And I
Can
wouldn't be
I?
surprised if they came back
Oh,
and started kissing our ass again. America, that is, because NATO needs America. America doesn't really need NATO. So when the cash cow of the IRGC is gone, what's that going to look like now? All of a sudden, people are going to change their tune, or what? They're going to go and be friends with China and Russia. It's going to be
Well,
interesting. Yeah, cat lady, go ahead.
sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding when you finished or not. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I would say be cautious about predicting the allies of the US. Sadly, the US is very unpredictable in this and does what's good for the US or maybe what they think is good. Good luck to Europe with China if they think they have something to look over there. I don't know. It's not. I'm not so optimistic, but I'm also not pessimistic. It will be surprising. That's for sure.
Well, that's one of the reasons why Trump wants Greenland so bad. It's because China wants it. They want to strengthen the economic ties to Greenland. They even want to put troops in Greenland, and that is something that we cannot allow. We cannot abide that, and that means acquiring Greenland for ourselves. Quite frankly, uh,
yeah.
which we
Me I'm not
Yeah, I didn't
necessarily
hear
saying
you.
I
I didn't
oh, I'm
hear the
not saying that
details.
I
Wait,
know where
whoa,
we're
what
gonna
did y'all say
sorry.
they want to put in Greenland?
troops. China wants troops
Kurds?
in Greenland.
Well,
And if we don't
I'm
stop them from
confused.
doing it, the Danish will let them do it because they're a bunch of cucks who bow down
Wait,
to them.
I'm very confused. Who wants to put the Kurds in Greenland, and why is that even a bad thing to let the Kurds go to Greenland?
I didn't I didn't say Kurds. I said troops. The
Troops?
China wants to put troops in Greenland.
That sounds like a good thing. I mean, fruit is healthy. Like, do we not want the people of Greenland to have fruit?
No,
I,
troops, like
Military people,
soldiers.
soldiers.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, troops. Okay, I was getting very
Samantha,
confused.
you're so sweet.
yeah, yeah, not for troops. They want to put
Okay.
troops in Greenland. Yeah, they want to put troops in Greenland, and we cannot let that happen because this is our hemisphere, and that would be disastrous for us. We got that's why we need Greenland. And the Danish would let them do it because they're a bunch of cucks. Because the Europeans don't have any balls. So we got to stop that from happening. It's our hemisphere, and we got to take ownership of it.
I also will say that I do see it I don't know what's gonna happen, obviously. I also think it's gonna be a little bit interesting and complicated because I actually think that Britain, the people of Britain, the native and kind of assimilated people of Britain are gonna do anything they can to stay close to America. That's kind of my opinion. I think that the cultural connections are just too old and too strong in some ways. So
I think I actually don't. I look, I actually heard from some like British people online that the the emotion is like stronger on the American side than on the British side. Just saying. Just saying. I don't know if it's representative or I think
okay,
like
well that's
sometimes
that's good
people
to
have
know.
like this homeland stuff and not always it's like the same strength. Sure.
That's information to consider. That may very well be true, and we will see how it plays out. I do have a little bit more faith in Britain than in Europe, though. Just there is more connections there. I could be wrong. Things could go haywire.
I think you got to differentiate between the British people and the British government. The British people have been trying to stop mass migration into their country for years now. The problem is that the government won't let them. And you have this huge bureaucracy that just refuses to do what the people want and refuses to let the politicians do what they were voted in to do. And of course, a lot of politicians just don't want to do it anyway because they're a bunch of snakes. And that's an insult to snakes. And you have a free Iran. Yeah, it's going to change. It's going to change everything. We'll have two big allies in the Middle East, and that's going to increase our leverage. I mean, like I said, just look at just take the gas prices for example. That's going to gas prices are going to go way down after what happened with Venezuela. That's going to give us a lot of leverage, and just the sheer aura that we're going to have a lot more power once this is done, and we can frankly bully the Europeans into doing what we want to do if we're ruthless enough. And I think Trump has potential to be that guy, to be ruthless, which he can be.
Spoken like a true American. Jeffrey, I'm going to interject to let you know that Armin is off in a meeting with Israeli news. And we also had Francesco raise his hand to chime in on this as well.
Yeah, what I want to say is that we always talk about, I don't know, ethnicity, the real breeds, they're not the breeds, but the point that I want to focus is democracies. Democracies are like the real ones, not the one like Russia, are the real reason why countries don't go to war with each other. That's why, for example, I support Iran now, the transition. And yeah, we generally when people talk about Europe is like a single block, but in Europe there are many nations and they're all democracies. If you don't like the leadership, they will be voted out eventually. You cannot vote out Xi Jinping or Putin. That's why America and Europe are natural allies. Also, America and Israel are natural allies for this reason. And yeah,
Can I?
America will never be natural ally, for example, of Syria under monarchy dictatorship like it
Francesco,
is.
can I ask something
But
about this?
I'd
Yeah.
like to just correct Francesco quickly. That's a truth with modification. You cannot vote out the leaders of the European Parliament and so forth, and not in any meaningful sense. So, like the notion that Europe is a democracy, they're within the European Union. That's to some extent it still applies, but it's in the gray zone, to be honest.
Actually, Francesco, I'm quite surprised because it doesn't sound right to me. Maybe I'm missing something. Uh, Democracy is like a form of rule, but why do you think it's like the main thing that makes allies? Isn't interest make allies?
Both in general democracy, if you see the predictors, democracies don't go to war with each other, whereas authoritarian countries, dictatorship do it all the time. And
Okay.
there are some places where, I mean, there are some geographical realities, right? For
No, but maybe
example,
it's more stable. I get it, but still, stable countries don't necessarily are allies.
there are interest and trade relationships and stuff, but that's from place to place. You have institutions, you have general rule of laws,
So if you have like this order and you have this predictability in some ways, you can count on people to be your allies.
and
I guess.
also they shift. I mean, Putin has seen many USA presidents, and he knows that he can just wait it out. Leadership changes in democratic countries. You might don't like Starmer now, but yeah, those things shifts.
I
There
think
will be a
Jeffrey
new
has something to
winter in
chime.
a while.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead, cat lady.
Oh no, I just said if you wait long enough, there will be a new wanker.
All right, Jeffrey, go ahead. Chime in.
I wasn't trying to inject. I just posted in the chat. So Francisco's not wrong. Monadic regime types, specifically represented republics or democracies, and economic interdependence does raise the minimum entrance barrier for interstate security competition to become interstate warfare. They are not in and of themselves decisive, or they don't trump traditional like security and warfare fighting indexes. A good example of that is World War One. So that doesn't mean though that you shouldn't pursue the expansion of representative republics or democratic governments, and or as long as everybody's engaging in a honest broker kind of manner, economic interdependence. That's one of the core foundations why President Trump is delinking. It's not because he doesn't agree with trade or economic interdependence. It's in response to a lot of other actors, not the least of which is elements of the autocratic bloc. So Putin's Communist Counterintelligence State, Chinese Communist Party, Mueller regime, on, taking a perverse advantage of globalization. In other words, they're not honest brokers. We adopted a total laissez-faire free market approach, whereas many of them did not. A good example would be the Chinese Communist Party not fulfilling its agreed requirements of fully privatizing all of their companies and not to engage in predatory financial policies in response to being included into the WTO and given most favored trade status. So it's not, I'm not saying it's incorrect. I'm just saying that there's a little more to that story or puzzle. And it's really cool that both Francisco and Cat Lady, via your respective contributions, are providing a much more comprehensive framework on how to think about it. That's super cool.
Yeah, can I say
Francesco, I saw your
something?
hand. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Yeah.
Yes. When I say natural, like the regimes that there are in China, now the Islamic Republic, Russia, really cause people there to be worse off in general. So the biggest challenge, for example, for China is a free Taiwan, because there you have the same ethnicity, more or less. So and you see that some people are thriving and why you don't. So, having this stark, representation of truth, it's a huge problems for dictatorships inside their own population, because they want to, of course, have the wealth, right, that free trade and those principles bring. So China and Taiwan will never be alive for these reasons, because of course disprove communism as an economic model. And another thing I want to say is that, for example, Iranians now are suffering from the fact that all their wealth has been spent in useless proxy conflicts all over the world. And that's what dictatorships do, because they are so weak and pathetic that they cannot take on democracies. And all their wealth is spent in subversions, try to fight from within, and to other proxies, for example, Africa and other parts of the world, to gain influence. So where democracies don't try to influence each other because they are worried about keeping the population happy and managing their own countries, all the wealth of dictatorship is spent abroad, not to take care of their own populations. Those communist states, they have a terrible welfare system. So all the money that they extract from their colonies and from within is spent to disrupt democracies. Yeah.
All right, guys. Is it okay if we go back to anybody if they had questions?
Yes, I've
Sorry
got
about
the
so.
list, but
Okay,
we
okay.
would like a very quick update from you on your interview first.
I think I did very well. It's going to come out tomorrow on Channel 12, and I think I did a good job. I was happy with it. You guys could,
Ask what
you guys
was the
could.
name of the person you spoke to?
She had like IJ something as her. Let me see. I don't know who she was. I couldn't even see her face. She could see my face, but it was a recording. So I don't know her name. But she asked really good questions.
All right, we'll keep an eye so we can all watch. Next on the list is Samantha, then Francesco.
Oh, I was just gonna ask if you knew, like, to what extent China might be willing to try to help keep Islamic Republic in power. That could make a huge difference on how difficult it's gonna be to get the Islamic Republic out of power.
Yeah, so China is not going to like it at all for the Islamic Republic to fall because it gets really good cheap oil from Iran at a discounted price, and it has become a major source of cheap oil and gas for China. Both China and Russia have been able to use the fact that the Islamic Republic is isolated to get so many deals from the Islamic Republic that basically gives away a lot of our resources at prices that is basically close to theft. I don't think they're going to do anything from a military perspective. It's very, very unlikely for that to happen because the Islamic Republic, if you read the writing on the wall, it's like it's it seemed everybody could see that it's one way or another is going to be falling. If it doesn't happen right now, it seemed like it's so weak right now that at some point it's going to fall apart. So if you spend any resources trying to save it, you are basically spending money on an investment that is going to crash anyways, so it's not worth the investment. Who are you going to war with? Like, maybe they would help them as in a way, like by sending them, so legally they might help them in the United Nations Security Council by vetoing whatever they need to veto. They might issue some really angry worded letters against the West and what they're doing. But militarily, if they wanted to help, they would not obviously participate in any war against Israel or United States. Like, that would be insane for China to get involved, like to fight over what? The Islamic Republic? Like, if China wants to go to war with the United States, at least they would make it something worthy, like Taiwan. They wouldn't go over the Islamic Republic. It's not worth fighting the United States over that. But if they wanted to help militarily, they might just basically give the Islamic Republic some weaponry, whatever military assets that they might need at this time to be able to defend themselves, but they wouldn't participate themselves. Another big loss for China and Russia is, if the Islamic Republic falls, is going to be that they liked the government in Iran, the regime in Iran, to be anti-Western, to basically slow them down and keep them occupied there. It's a really big blow to both China and Russia if the government in Iran turns pro-America. It's a Especially for the Cold War that we're seeming to be entering in, having America have such a powerful ally in the Middle East is going to be something that Russia and China will not be able to take advantage of when that Cold War starts, against, like, as a way to have leverage over the United States and its allies in the Middle East. So they're losing a major leverage to put pressure on the allies of United States in the Middle East. So that's devastating for them. But there's nothing they could do.
About it, depending on the level of help the Islamic Republic can get from other Islamist groups, I think it's possible that with enough technology and weaponry support from China, no matter how high a price the Iranian people might be willing to pay to overthrow the Islamic Republic, I'm not sure it's enough if the Iranian people don't get help.
But if the Iranian people don't get help, that means that the cost of this revolution is going to be very, very high, and it's going to take a much longer time than we want. But I don't see any way for the Islamic Republic to survive. Like, I don't see it. They're basically going completely bankrupt. And I mean, as much as they have some people who are ideologically will defend them, no matter, even if they don't get paid, at some point there's not enough of those ideological
But if it
people.
at a certain point, it might be cheaper for China to pay those people and still kind of rob the oil than, like,
I don't
let
see China basically coming out paying terrorists to kill Iranians. Like, that is too far of a red line even for China to come on Iranian soil and pay terrorists to kill Iranians. I think China is too connected to the global order as we're in, right? So there are some limits that it pretends to abide by because China benefits too much from the world order that it's in. It cannot be too obvious of a monster. This is cartoonish level of evil to basically pay internationally recognized terrorist groups to kill civilian people in a country. Like that is something that the Islamic Republic and even Putin is willing to do. But I think it's a step too far maybe for China.
China could just maybe like tell the Islamic Republic, hey,
There's some
if
money.
you kind of low key put this money aside for terrorist groups, we'll pay a little bit more for oil because it's still cheaper to pay you a little bit more for oil than to
I don't
not
know.
have you control.
China has proven to not lift a finger when the Islamic Republic needed them the most. Like China was always there to take advantage of the weakness of the Islamic Republic to suck whatever they want, or suck whatever oil and gas they want out of it. But they have never really been there for Islamic Republic when they needed them, right?
But has Islamic
So then,
Republic ever faced a risk of actually falling like this?
yeah, but the risk is so guaranteed that I don't think that China. I mean, the Chinese government is really wise. Like, don't get me wrong; they know they have the proper information. They know what's happening, and they're not going to basically be continuing to betting on a dying horse. Like, why would
But
they
that's the thing,
continue
is
betting?
it's a dying horse.
It is a dying horse. Like, if you crunch the numbers economically, to keep this Frankenstein monster alive, you're going to need astronomical amount of money, which China will not be willing to. It's not worth it. But yeah,
Jeffrey has put a hand up. I think he wants to chime in on
yeah,
this, if that's all right.
Jeffrey.
Hey guys, yeah, sorry about the camera being off. So you're both talking about real issues that are being looked at. So on one instance, Armin is very correct that China, the Chinese Communist Party that's illegally occupied mainland China since 1949, is going to game its behavior based on risk and loss. He's not wrong. That said, Samantha's also equally not wrong, especially if the Chinese Communist Party sees, well, the Mullah regime's going out, so they're going to give the Mullah regime as much material assistance as they can, where it doesn't eat into primary capabilities they need to go into Taiwan if it ups the cost of U.S. intervention, which indeed they're doing. The thing regarding what's not going to help the Chinese Communist Party though, is that like there's a reason Pete Hegseth did what he did, Armin. There's a reason we did like a World War II level expansion of our munitions production because we know what was coming. I can't let you keep it and block some things out. You'll see exactly what was sent up the chain, at least from me, regarding how war is inevitable and how we're in the opening stages of probably a high intensity world war. And we have to act in a manner we have to act in accordance with that reality. And not the least of that is taking as many of the pieces of the autocratic bloc off the board. And one of the main ones is taking out the Mullah regime that's illegally occupied Iran since 1979. We cannot afford to not do it. So, I mean, you're both dancing, like you're both approaching, much like Francisco and I think it was Cat Lady, you're both talking about a different part of this overall puzzle, and they're not mutually exclusive. It's really cool that you guys are doing that. Can I say
Interesting.
something to Samantha? Hey, Samantha, I felt real bad yesterday because I know that bothered you what went on. I hope you understand I wasn't trying to make your anxiety go up with regards to what happened in Minnesota. I understand how you feel. I just wanted to say that wasn't meant to make you feel uncomfortable.
Thanks.
Also, Samantha, please note that a security analyst thought that you had some really good points about China's way of looking at this. So that's pretty impressive.